Hello geometry students and welcome back to another video lesson. Today we are going to be looking at another set of rules for finding angles on the interior of a circle, expanding our vocab and our knowledge just a little bit more so that we can use something called secants. And so make sure you're taking notes, make sure you're jotting these things down as we go through them. Now, first of all, I want you to draw this picture and draw this sort of a diagram, because when we have a circle, we really have a lot of different components that we could create within a circle. A radius goes from the center to a point on the circle, right? That's our radius. Diameter goes from one point on the circle to the other point on a circle through the center, and the arc is any measurement on the circle itself. So those are things we've already dealt with and we've talked about. The red line up on top is called a tangent. And a tangent is a line that touches a circle at exactly one point, one and only one point, and it is perpendicular to the radius or to the diameter. So we could draw that point to point here and it would be perpendicular. So it only touches it at one point. That's a tangent. A secant is a line that passes through the circle, goes through, it extends in both directions, and it touches the circle at 2 points. But it does not go through the center. Not through the center. A chord is just like a secant then, where it has 2 ending points on the circle, but it doesn't go through the center. The diameter is considered a chord, but we call it very specifically a diameter. Okay, chord goes through the circle. And we're going to be dealing a lot today with these secants and chords and how they create some of the different angles that we might have on the inside. So it's a good idea to pause this, jot those notes and examples down. All right, so recall what we have been working on last week, and even what you took your quiz on, was identifying when 2 lines intersect on the circle, called the inscribed angle. BED, angle B to E to D, is an inscribed angle because its vertex is on the circle. It's exactly on it, which means this arc from B to D is twice this angle measure. So if the angle measure is 40, the arc is 80. Okay, that's what we learned last week. You should know that when it intersects on the circle. Here we can call this line BC and this line AD, we can call them secants, right? Because they go through the circle, they touch the circle at 2 spots, they just don't go through the center. However, where they intersect is point E, and the important piece is it's on the circle. On the circle. That's what allows us to use that half or double rule. If the arc is 80, the angle is 40. It's half of it, okay? We do have a newer set of rules, though. What happens now if those 2 lines, and notice I use the same diagram, I just, instead of having them intersect out here on the circle, we're going to have them intersect inside the circle. Not on the center, though, right? The Z is the center. Okay, so what happens is the angle changes. It's no longer half, right? BED is no longer half of 80 because the angle is going to get larger as it gets closer to the arc, right? It's no longer half. The important part here is the intersection. They intersect inside the circle. They intersect inside the circle, but not on the center. We already know if it intersects on the center that it's the same as the arc. There is a rule that goes with this, and let me try and walk you through what this rule shows. I'm going to cover this stuff up for a minute, and then we'll walk through it together. So what this is showing is that the measure of this arc over here, AC, we can actually find the measure of that if I know the angle measure and the opposite arc, right? The angle measure is 56. which means that this angle measure is also, I could label this one as 56 right here, because those are vertical angles, but we have to know the opposite arc. Because here's the rule. If I add the two arcs, if I add arc AC plus I add arc BD and then divide it by 2, I get the angle measure. Arc plus arc divided by 2 gives me the angle measure. I'm taking the average of the arcs. Okay, so what we basically do is we plug in what we know. I know the angle of BED is 56, and I know arc BD is 80. So we plug that in, and then we solve. Multiply 2 to both sides, so that the measure of AC plus 80 has to be 112, and then we know that the measure of AC would have to have been 32. And you can check that, right? Add the arcs, 32 plus 80, that's 112, divided by 2 gives you 56, which is the intercepting arc. And notice how they're almost lined up, right? If I draw them, a line through them, they're lined up. And that's how I know I'm using the right arcs with the right angle. All right, let's look at another one. Let's see if we can't find the measure of arc AB. Take a moment and see if you can't apply it. All right, so AB, I'm going to just highlight that in red, is right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line to show these are the three things that we're working with. 128 plus the arc and 124. So the rule states that arc AB plus the opposite arc, which is 128, divided by 2 will give me that interior angle measure of 124. Arc plus arc divided by 2 gives me the interior angle measure. And again, it's because it's not on the center. All right, so I'm going to multiply by 2. Arc AB plus the 128 that we already know has to be 248, right? Because we multiply both sides by 2. So now I'm going to subtract the 128 from both sides, and we get arc AB is equal to 120 degrees. 120. All right, so this is that new third rule, okay? And I'm just going to very quickly summarize all three of them, right? If this is on the center, right? If they intersect, and I should draw this better. Let me just draw a more accurate representation. If they intersect, and they happen to intersect on the center, if this is 70, so is the angle. If they intercept on the circle, if this was 70, this would have to be 35. So those are the two rules that we had last week and we took a quiz on. Now we have this third rule. If this is 100 and this arc is 50, I would have to add them together and divide by 2 to get the middle arc would be 75. 150 divided by 2. Okay, so those are the three rules. You might want to make sure that you have those, 75. Have those jotted down so that you have a visual representation. If you have any questions, please make sure that you do indeed reach out. Take notes. Make sure you paused and tried some of these. Otherwise, reach out when you need to. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.